You've heard him many times, more than your own voicemail, with clients from McDonald's, Ford, Wendy's, Coke, and K-Swiss, just to get started. This is a voice that has sold millions and inspired billions. He's been in Stranger Things, Ozark, and Homeland. But his biggest role might be helping you sound unforgettable. Discover how one actor turned voice into vision and why every word you speak could change the game. Meet Brian Lafontaine, actor, speaker, public speaking coach. More from Brian Lafontaine right now.
Well, here we are in the studio. And I guess you already know who I have in the studio. I couldn't even come up with a better intro than that myself. So I'm just going to say he's a very in-demand actor, voiceover talent, and now public speaking coach because he's also a speaker, which you know is pretty important to me because I'm a big fan of public speakers. But Brian Lafontaine, welcome to the studio here.
I don't know how to follow that opening.
I know. It's like, thank you.
That's the
y'all have a good night.
Intro I've ever had in my life. I can't live up to that.
Yeah, so you better start
right?
now.
Jeez. All right, here we go.
Okay, so let's go into. Well, first I want to cover this.
Sure.
The fact that everybody asks me these questions. Mm-hmm. As we know, I coach performers when it comes to the music industry, but these are so associated with the music industry right
Absolutely.
now, especially since any entrepreneur, any business owner, any I guess person that's on stage performing,
mm-hmm.
you got to know how to pull the audience in. You have to know how to talk. And nobody seems to coach them on this. So they'll, like with the performers, they'll get in there and they'll just, go up and do their thing and think it's all about the song list.
Right.
And wonder why they stay in the same places over and over.
Right.
You have these people that are trying to launch a new business in an age of social media
mm-hmm.
and they don't know how to, be in front of people or to go to these networking events. It even helps when you're talking to people. So we're going to cover public speaking a lot towards the end of the show. Okay. But first, I want to talk about how you got there because your journey and what you're even primarily known for before the public speaking coaching is that you're an actor and voiceover talent. So how did you get drawn into acting and voiceover?
I always wanted to be an actor. Always did, ever since I was a little kid. It was one of those, sort of fantasy professions. I talk about it a little bit, when you saw me do the talk at Creative Mornings a few weeks ago, that every time I turned on the TV, every time I went to a movie, there was just that awe of like, how do you get to do this? How does someone get to do this? And especially when I would see kids on TV or in movies, it's like, how do you get to do that? But I'm from a working class family from the state of Rhode Island, the smallest state in the country.
And I didn't know that about you. I didn't know you were from Rhode Island.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
So the idea of becoming an actor was truly this, unrealistic possibility. That was something that other people did. That doesn't happen to us. We're in Rhode Island. We do other things,
My mom actually had that speech with us when we were young. That's for those people.
Absolutely. And I had these conversations with my parents in some way along the way. And not that they ever really said that, but there was always that mindset of, and my parents are wonderful people, but I'm just going to be blunt. And it kind of came across as happiness is for other people, not for us. We don't do what we want to do in life. We do what we have to do in life. And that just never really made sense to me. Maybe it's because I'm the middle child. I have no idea.
That has a lot to do with it.
Right.
I know a lot of middle children, but they succeed.
I don't know what I did that was so different from the rest of my siblings, but I was kind of the first one to break out of that mold and truly think, no, I am going to try and do this. Whether or not I succeed or fail is a different deal. But I went to college. I went to Catawba College in Salisbury, North Carolina on a very small golf scholarship. And I lost my scholarship after my freshman year. They were like, you suck at golf. We're kicking you off the team. We're taking your scholarship back. And so I did what any normal person would do in that situation. And I went into stand-up comedy. Of course I did. Why wouldn't I? So this was around 1990 when, cable was truly at its peak and every stand-up comedian had a special on cable, on HBO, whatever. So stand-up was everywhere. And
it was even on your phones a little bit after that. You know, when those little Nextels first came out, they had those little clips of comedians right after.
Did they really?
Yeah. That's how I learned about Rodman and a lot of these guys.
So I did, so I started doing stand-up, and I did stand-up for 3 years. And that led, after I graduated from college, I was doing nothing, being a bum. And my roommate was a theater graduate. And he said, you should go and audition at this theater. They're doing these 2 Neil Simon plays. He's like, you'd be great. And so that opportunity really presented itself to try and live out this childhood fantasy. It was something that I was always drawn to, but I never knew how to pursue it. And I didn't study it in school. I didn't go to school to be an actor. I got my degree in communications, which was related, but not the same thing. I learned how to talk to people. And that was because I thought I was going to be in the golf business. I thought I was going to be giving lessons and running tournaments at a local country club. So I needed to learn how to talk to people. That's the real reason why I studied communications. Also, it had the least required number of hours to graduate in the major. So it was like the easiest path out of college. I'll get a communications degree. But this audition came up, and I went and auditioned, and I got the lead. I got the lead in these 2 plays at the same time. They were doing the first and third part of this Neil Simon trilogy, Brighton Beach Memoirs and Broadway Bound.
That's a great way to start, Neil Simon.
Yeah. Yes. And so it was like right into the deep end. I didn't have just one show that I was responsible for. I had 2 at the same time. And it was everything that I could have imagined that it would have been. It was this unbelievable experience where I was just immersed in this.
Right. But I don't, unless you're called to do it, I always say this. Talking about not having, golf, like how that went away.
Right.
I always say your environment in the world shapes you into who you think you're supposed to be, but God causes things to happen so you find out who you are supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I see that with musicians like Julio Iglesias, how he hurt his foot in soccer, so he becomes, the singers, the same kind of thing. But I also see something in those kind of people like you that they get that opportunity, but they sink their teeth into that opportunity. Mm-hmm. Not everybody does that.
Looking back on the story now, and I've told it a number of times, the events that occurred do kind of look like, there's a huge argument for maybe this was fate in the way that this happened. Because those shows were a huge success. We're talking sold-out performances, standing ovations, rave reviews in the newspaper. There was a woman who was in the cast with me who was a local talent agent, and she was like, you're coming with me. So they're still my agent to this day, and they started sending me out for movies and commercials and voiceovers and TV shows, and that's how I really, it was like, here you go, you're an actor, man.
And you are.
You
truly are.
I was fully committed to it, and when we were going through the rehearsal process for those shows, there was that realization during rehearsals about halfway through where I was already thinking, I was like, this show's going to come to an end. And I was already wondering, it's like, how do you walk away from this? How do people go back to normal life after having an experience like this? You get this opportunity to do something that you've been dreaming of forever.
Right.
And then you're asked to put it down and go back and, work at a bank or whatever it was. And so I had a conversation with the director during rehearsals one night, and he said, I'm going to tell you something that I've only told to 2 other actors before in my life. And he said, you're going to be the 3rd. And he said, you should be doing this for a living. And when you get that affirmation from someone that you admire and respect and who's at the top of his profession at that time, then I had to make that choice. Am I going to pay attention to this, or am I going to, run scared and be like, no, I can't. I could never possibly. I've never been that type of person. It's like I've always taken the path, I don't want to say less traveled, but the one that's always a little bit riskier and, rolling the dice a little bit more. I mean,
yeah, but you accept the challenge. I mean,
exactly.
A lot of people may talk a big game at the beginning of that, but then the work comes after you make that, declaration and you follow it up. And it's so funny to me, and you and I have joked about this, but you are such a bubbly personality, in person.
Thank you.
But when you watch you on TV, I've seen so many of your parts where you're always auditing somebody or giving them medical bad news or setting up, some downfall of something that I actually feel judged and analyzed. Just sitting, here in front of you, I've seen your face so many times in that kind of scenario. But with that, because I know that theater, for instance, projection and a lot of different elements. It's a lot different than being on set at a movie.
Sure.
Your technique is totally different. How do you adjust like that?
Time. Practice. Yeah. I mean, that's where, as you said, that's where the work comes in. That's where you're developing the technique and the skill. You know, to me, at the end of the day, acting is acting is acting. It doesn't matter if you're doing it on stage or if you're doing it in front of a camera. The principles are the same. The medium is different. The space that you're doing it in is different. Obviously, with theater, you're going to project and fill the space a little bit more and be a little bit bigger physically because you're trying to hit the people
Everybody
in the back row. Right. But you still want to have that same grounded connection with the story, with the connection with the other actor, the moment that's happening in the scene. You still want that to be just as real and as authentic and as genuine as if, the camera's right here and you can be really, really still. I was actually working with a bunch of young students just a couple of days ago, having that very same conversation of there's a lot of power in stillness, whether you're on camera or on stage. There still can be a lot of power in stillness, and it just comes with with just practice and trusting yourself that you don't have to do more than you think you do. The audience, if you're in it, if you're connected to it, the audience will lean in and come with you. I mean, how many times have we been sitting in a movie theater and the movie truly just draws us in, where all of a sudden we find ourselves leaning forward in our seats? That's not a coincidence. They brought us in. We want to try and they're pulling us into the action.
And it's because that actor understands audiences first.
Sure.
And, I even saw this when I was in professional wrestling, which was there would be guys that were like, hey, I didn't get my move in. Well, you know what? It's not about your move. It's like, are you creating something great for the audience? And it's the same thing with an actor. It's like, I didn't, I wanted to do this thing, but that part doesn't. I had a drummer in here not too long ago that said he fired himself on a song because he knew to get that song to the audience, it didn't need drums on it at all. And a great artist, understand it.
Sure.
What would you consider your breakthrough project that really got you noticed?
That's going to be a tough one. I mean, because I still don't think of myself as having broken through. I mean, I can walk anywhere and nobody knows who I am. I'm not a recognizable
But that's because you're a great character actor. You are. I mean,
thank you.
You played in. If anybody out there looks him up, sees his resume, he's been in everything you watch. Everything from, like we talked about, Ozark. Stranger Things is now going into season 5, and you've been on that as well. And you just kind of I guess Netflix and Amazon are kind of your home, right? When you're not in Charlotte.
I don't know if it was the breakthrough, but I mean, personally, it was the very first real TV gig that I did. I did a miniseries for HBO called From the Earth to the Moon, which was about the Apollo space program, and it was produced by Ron Howard and Tom Hanks, and it was a huge success. It basically was the beginning of transforming how television is now in the United States. It was one of those 13-episode miniseries, limited series, and I think so many other shows have copied that model since then. And I did one episode of that show, and I played this engineer who was helping design the lunar module, the spider thing that actually lands on the moon when Neil Armstrong comes out. And I broke it. In the show, I break the lem. And so I have one scene all by myself, which already that's a gift.
Yes.
No dialogue, just me freaking out. And then a scene with myself and Matt Craven, who's another longtime, acting warrior who's been in a zillion things. And he's the lead in this episode. And he and I just have a one-on-one scene together. And Graham Yost was directing the episode. And if anyone knows the movie Speed, Graham wrote Speed, and he's directed and produced a ton of other things. And he was directing this episode. So we were shooting my coverage, and it was somewhat of an emotionally charged scene as well. And we did one take, and they stopped, and they both turned and looked at each other, and they were like, we wasted this guy, meaning we should have given this guy a much bigger role in the show. We wasted him on this smaller, yet truly significant part in the show. And they were just so highly complimentary. He sent me a handwritten note after the show was over, and it just gave me, again, that affirmation that this is where you belong. This isn't just a fluke. This isn't just a one-off, hey, you got lucky. It was like, oh no, you deserve to be here just as much as anybody else. So that gave me the confidence to truly continue pursuing it and feeling like I can get as high up as I can go.
Well, and with this, you've been on camera, done great work there, but then this other thing comes into play where it's just your voice, and that opens up a lot more. That's one of the things when you look at an actor's resume, I don't care how big they are, But if they're working full time, they're doing everything from television shows to movies to video games,
right,
to commercials,
right,
to voiceovers and animation,
yes,
shows or animated shows. So with that, what drew you into that? Just wanting to work?
Well, part of it, sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm working out of a smaller market. I've spent some time in Los Angeles and I lived in New York for a few years, but I, created the foundation of my profession working out of the Southeast, which was considered a smaller market. So in order to have a full-time acting career, I had to be able to check a lot of boxes. I had to be able to do theater. I had to be able to do commercials. I had to be able to do corporate work and film and TV. So I had to be able to fit every one of those categories, voiceover included. And because I didn't go to school and study this, I was really learning as I went along, and I had no idea how many different options or avenues there were. And my agent, thank God, they were ones that pulled me aside and they sat me down and they said, "We think you've got this really wonderful voice and we want to start submitting you for voiceover work." Great. So this was back in the old days, back in the late 1900s, when you still went to the studio to actually record a session. And there were a few studios in town at the time doing it. Now there's only one left. And I was able to get in. Like the very first voiceover audition that I went to, I didn't get the job. But the next day, the studio called my agent and they said, "We really like Brian's voice. We want to add him to our talent database. So we want to bring him back into the studio and put a demo together for him so we can have him in our database of voices." And so this was also at the time when we didn't audition as much. Clients would come in from ad agencies and say, "We're looking for voice talent." And the studios would say, "Well, here's this voice, this voice, this voice, this voice." Play the demo and they would go, "We want that guy." And they would just call and say, they want to book you for this voiceover job. So once again, being so young and naive, I didn't realize that this was something that I could turn into an actual full-time profession, just voiceover alone. When I found out that there were people doing full-time voiceover, that blew my mind. I can put a studio in my home. All I need is a computer and a really good microphone and a quiet space, and I can do this. And that everything, when MP3s came along and it became digital, you didn't even have to leave your house. You didn't have to put on pants. You didn't have to brush your teeth. It became sort of the greatest possibility for truly working as an actor. You still get to take a script and you have to make choices very, very quickly and break it down very, very quickly. And you do get to stretch yourself a little bit. And I say a little bit meaning it's changed somewhat over the past 10 years, I'm going to say, because there was kind of a mindset of you're either a commercial voice guy or you're a character voice guy.
Right.
And the lines wouldn't really cross for the longest time. Guys who did animation couldn't get a commercial job to save their life, and guys like me who get hired to sound like this 99% of the time couldn't get hired to do any of the character voices that we could do. Now it's different because you have access to everyone in the world at the push of a button. The voiceover business is now global, meaning that, you and I might be auditioning for the same thing, and so is literally, in some cases, everyone else in the world.
So many opportunities, though. You think when you were just here and it was the banking capital and, you had a lot of corporate America here and you're trying to get that extra work. But now between, there's not just 3 networks and
right.
What was that joke? There's 3 networks and if the president was on, your night was shot.
Right.
I forget what comedian.
Right.
But it's not that. There's like so many streaming networks. So many, websites that have things. Yeah. Even products are doing movies about the product. Like you'll see one of the card, high-end card manufacturers will have you go to their website and now they have like a series.
Oh, yeah.
Some fictional series that they have on there as well. So on and on. Music videos, there's just so much, so many things that you can be involved in now. And I remember I went to some movie, and the first time my youngest son at the time had heard a voiceover, we go in there, and the narrator comes on, and my son tells the whole theater, "Shh, it's God." Because,
pretty much,
you have that power when you come into the mic or the Sunday. It used to be one of the typical ones, but now it's everything. It's from you will hear people that'll do reels online, to promote themselves on Instagram now. They'll do their different character voices, and you're like, oh, that's that person. But that's another, marketing thing for them where they get the name out. Now, I want to go into 2 things because I got another question on voiceover. But first, I want to ask you, describe yourself as radically reliable, and what does that mean in the creative world?
Well, I use the word radically to try and make it sound fun, because I do try to keep the sessions fun. I try to keep the work fun because it's supposed to be fun. Anything that we're putting out there is some version of entertainment.
Right.
And nothing that we're doing, as valuable as it is, it's not the end of the world. We are not curing cancer, unfortunately. We are not, solving the homeless crisis. We are not coming up with a solution to feeding everybody. We're telling stories. We're creating advertisements for products to make people's lives better. Important, yes. Is it that serious? No. So I always try to make the sessions, that whether I'm on set or in the voiceover booth or in the studio, make them fun sessions, because it should be a good time. Reliable, well, that's just the professionalism. I mean, that's what's going to help separate you from everybody else. One of the reasons why I get hired as often as I do is because they know that I'm going to give them something that they can work with no matter what. I've had ad agencies tell me that I can take a horrible script and turn it into an award-winning spot, because I can, take the words and find a way to add personality and character and, fun to it in a way that maybe they didn't necessarily see by looking at the piece of paper. So, that's where the reliability comes in, is that no matter what they're working on, they know that they're going to have something that they can work with and feel proud about when the session's over.
Yeah, that's what we talk to people about. No matter what you're calling, you're going to get brought in for more stuff, more opportunities. If you show up on time, and you deliver. I mean, that's just the game.
Yes.
It's just not about, a lot of people come into these worlds, whether it's music or public speaking or whatever, just to, the fame aspect that attracts them. We all know, those of us that are in it.
Yeah.
You're famous now on Facebook. You got your own Facebook page. You're famous to somebody.
Sure.
So you see how that's ridiculous. Yep. Anyway, it's the art and developing that art, being the best at it that you can be, maybe even better than you think you can be, hopefully. And then you show up and you deliver.
Because there's so many people trying to do it. The competition's there. And if you really want to do it professionally, you want to make a living doing this, and it's not just a hobby, or you're not doing it just to become famous or to be noticed, then you've got to stay competitive. You've got to stay on top of your skill set.
Right.
Because there's somebody right behind you who's dying to switch places with you,
ready to shorten your shelf life, and
or just eager to get in the door. There's only so many spots that are available, even for the auditions. There's only so many people that they're going to consider, and you got to think of how many, and that number by itself is already huge. You have to think about how many other, literally thousands of people aren't being seen.
Right.
And would, push somebody down a flight of stairs in order to trade places with you.
But, it's about doing the work in your own time.
Right.
And those, that's how mastering is done. And your brand is Story Forward VO. Can you tell me that? Go into a little bit more depth on that.
Well, again, to me, even if you're selling health insurance, or you're selling hamburgers, or you're selling soap, stories stick. Data doesn't. People are going to remember the story. They're not going to remember all the facts and figures and expository information. So even if you're handed that, how do I take this and try and make it more story-like, to make it seem a little bit more appealing?
Right.
When I teach some of my public speaking workshops, I'll talk about that whole story stick, data doesn't, and I'll ask somebody sitting in the audience who's got a favorite movie, and so people will always raise their hand, and I'll ask, first I'll ask what the movie is, and then I'll ask, do you know what the budget was to make that movie? And they'll say no. Do you know how much money it made at the box office? They'll say no. I'll say, do you know how many awards it won? They'll say no. And then I'll ask, can you tell me what the movie's about? And they'll say yes.
Yes.
And I'm like, yeah, there you go. Because you made a connection with the person that you were watching. You had a connection to the actual story. It pulled you in somehow. It took you on this ride, this adventure, this journey, gave you this experience. It didn't just throw information at you and that's it.
Absolutely. And we're going to take a quick break.
Sure.
Hear from sponsors. Find out what's going on at the mighty rBeatz. And when we come back, we're not just going to talk about his story. We're going to talk about your story, the importance of it, and how you need to get it out. And this is the man to tell you how to do that. So we'll be right back after this.
Hey there, welcome to the Watch List, presented by DJ rBeatz, hosted by me, Greasy Keys, in the rBeatz VIP Suite. We bring you the best of the best, live shows, streaming trends, and indie pop, and much more. You can stream now on the all-new ROQ Radio on rBeatz.com, highlighting indie artists from all over the world. Focusing now on hashtag local music somewhere, hashtag Charlotte. This month, we have artists that have earned cross-pollination into more than one stream, and we are proud to announce all the streams that our favorite artists have dropped on. Check it out right here on the rBeatz Radio Global Boutique Streaming and Media Network. Now, let's celebrate these incredible artists. Starting off with Zach Robbins and his song, The Day That You Deserve. The incredible Foreign Air with their song, Maniac. The reggae vibes of Treehouse with their song, Genuine Love. Alina Rogers with her song, 9 Lives. My buddy Justin Clyde Williams with his tune, No Demise. The incredible Keith Allen Circus with It's All Love. And Alex Harris featuring Kanya Das with their song, Better. Now, all the way from Africa on the We Global Radio, we have the Jazz Hop Cooker with African Voices. Kobe Deer with I Won't Lie. Halen Frost with Indiezer Leer. From Belgium, by the way. Vio Flesh with Within the Veil. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard with Eyes Like the Sky. Miley Taylor with West Coast and their song Slip. Abrilia with Moulama. This has been Greasy Keys in the rBeatz VIP Suite. Be sure to check out all these amazing artists and be on the lookout for the next edition of the Watch List presented by rBeatz. Peace.
And we're back. I got Brian in the studio with me. The, great acting and voiceover and public speaking talent. And we're going to talk to you about how these people can get their story out and the importance of that. But before we do, have a couple more questions.
Okay.
So one of them is about branding because, with voiceover and even the acting, you've branded yourself pretty well. And you work with brands, everything from so many of them. We might even list them a little bit later, but there's a lot of them. But you've mastered marketing, your own brand. What advice do you have for artists struggling to define and get theirs out?
Don't give up. I mean, I know that's going to sound cliche. As far as tactics or strategies, I'll be completely transparent. I am not doing this by myself. I am I may not look it, but I am a crusty old man who doesn't like technology. So, when I really started pushing this and realizing that I had to brand it more, it was that wake up call of, you need to keep up with the times or you're truly going to get left behind. So I had to make that choice. It's like either I bring somebody in to help me with the social media and the marketing, side of it, or I'm screwed. It really was going to be like that.
You can't get anything out these days. No. I hear people that, they speak against that. Sounds like I'm in church. We speak against that. My dad was a pastor. but in that, they're not getting ahead. They tell me they're going to market like the old ways and they're going to show me how it works. But I didn't invent the rules of, why it works with social media now and why it does not. No. It's just here to stay.
Yeah. You're right. Whether you agree with it or not, or what your take is on social media, it is the way. So you've got to either become really well skilled and educated in it, or you need to find somebody, invest in somebody who can help get you there. And I went that route. I brought somebody in. I knew what my limits were, and my wonderful marketing coordinator, Eileen Schleiser, she got a difficult last name to say, but she has been doing a fantastic job of helping me market and promote and strategize on social media. I would be lost without her. Now, we can sort on everything. Everything gets run through me and by me, and I have to sign off on it to make sure that it has my voice, that it has my personality. You can hire somebody to put stuff together for you, but it still needs to
your brand.
It needs to represent your brand and what you're striving to, achieve or accomplish. And if it doesn't, then, people still aren't going to connect with it because it's not going to resonate. It's going to seem inauthentic. It's going to seem artificial. So it has to be a true representation of you and what you're trying to get out.
Genuine wins every time.
Yeah.
And, that's the thing. I always, whether it's a band or whatever they're involved in, it's like have a creative director.
Yes.
If you don't have the time or you're unwilling to sit down and learn this stuff for yourself, you need somebody in that seat. and they need to be getting a lot of credit and part of what you're doing to, make this happen.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that's more important than a manager, depending on the situation that's going on right now because of how things have changed. Now, you were talking about a home studio. Can you tell them basically what they need to have this home studio? And is there any specific equipment that you recommend maybe over others?
I mean, specific equipment is going to vary. If you're just starting out, you don't have to break the bank, but you do have to invest in what I'm just going to call studio grade equipment, meaning that if you're going to try and be a voiceover artist from home, and COVID blew the roof off of this. I already had the home studio set up. I had it for years, but we were more of we were more of a rare breed of people having the home studio. The serious ones had it, and the other ones who were doing it, hadn't quite caught up to that yet because there were still places where they could go and record and go into. And then when COVID happened and no one could leave home, you had to have a home studio. Yes. You absolutely had to have it. And
people got used to a lot of things that they didn't know during COVID.
And so now that's become the absolute standard. Any agent that you try and submit to, one of the first questions that they're going to ask you is, do you have a studio grade in-home studio that you work out of? And they're going to ask you what your equipment is. I personally have it's just called a vocal booth. The more generic term is the whisper room, which is the freestanding triple layered audio booth that knocks out about 90% of the outside noise, so it is all soundproof and it sounds beautiful. Those come in a variety of shapes and sizes, and there are a number of different companies that make them. You can find them online. I have a Neumann U87 microphone, which is pretty much top of the line. I mean, I've been doing this for as long as I have, and over the years, it's like you have to continue to invest in yourself in the business. My interface is a Sound Devices USB Pre, which is, again, very highly rated. A lot of studios work with it. So, my gear is pretty top notch, but there are a lot of different levels in between, and you can find this stuff online. You need a really, I'm going to say a really good condenser mic, meaning like at least a good quality one. You don't have to spend a ton of money, but you need to have a good condenser mic. You need to have a good solid interface that's going to connect from your microphone to your computer and get into your software system, whatever you're using. You have to have a space that you can record in. That's the biggest thing. Nobody wants to hear your neighbor mowing their lawn or your dog barking, 2 rooms over,
right?
Or a fire truck going by, because that interrupts and interferes with the session. So, there are a lot of tricks to the trade where you can try and surround yourself with couch cushions and pillows and things like that, and you can make that work for a little while. But if they book you for a session and you're going to be connected to the studio that's going to be recording you, they need to know that, again, the audio that they pull is going to make it seem like you're right there in the building with them. Just kind of like what we're doing right now.
Super important. Even on this, I mean, I've had some very well-known people on this show that the day I have them on the show is the day their groundskeeper shows up.
Of course. And
they don't have the mics we have, so they're just running it through the computer.
Exactly.
And it does work that way.
Yeah.
So let's talk about speaking, because that's something we both love, for sure. And man, I grew up a preacher's son, hung around a lot of the televangelists, and was involved in that kind of TV. And then, of course, with the comedy circuit, seeing those people.
Right.
Did you ever think that the public speaking demand would be like it is now? Somebody like Nate showing up in, 30,000 seat places, and just him standing, which Eddie Murphy was kind of, I guess Eddie and Richard were kind of the first ones, doing that. And these guys, there's so many of them now, Chappelle and Hart and all these guys, they come in and they got a coliseum full of people paying tickets, not for some band on stage.
Nope.
A guy on a microphone.
Right.
And a couple lights up above them.
Right.
That's the power of that. And, the other thing is just like, there are so many conferences. There are so many business conferences out there that book more than just business speakers. And you got all these, you used to have CAA and, these environment. Now even Gary Vaynerchuk has his own, speakers bureau or agency, and he's put them out there like crazy. And when you see the numbers on some of these guys, they range to very low to upwards around. Some of them, I just heard, were getting $200,000 to do virtual speaking engagements. Is that not crazy? But that's,
Wow.
that's where that's gone for different speakers.
Good
So
God.
obviously when you have those kind of things, just like acting, just like singing, just like voiceover, people are like, oh, I didn't realize that was a thing. And, now they want to become that. But it's even more than that. Everybody has a great story inside them.
Yes.
And that story will help somebody else. And, that could be through a Rotary Club. It could be through, a Toastmasters event. It could be through, their local church or whatever, just getting them started. And, of course, they see after they get in there if they have that calling. And that.
Right.
I always say, your calling. If you're a musician and you're sitting in the car and you're listening to that vocal line intensely, or you listening to that, the bass line or whatever it is, and you're really into that, you're more called than the person that just wants to sing because they don't want to pump gas or whatever it is, that they're trying to avoid. It's the same thing with acting, just like we talked about with you. You're going to be that guy that's going to sink your teeth into it. Same thing here. You'll know once you get into it. But regardless of whether you're trying to be a professional speaker one day or doing, giving that toast at the wedding.
Right.
There's so much need for this. You're the perfect coach for this. Let's talk about your services and what you offer there.
Well, I do offer one-on-one public speaking coaching services, whether it be in person or virtual. I know this is a bigger audience than just the city that we're in. I do, corporate workshops. I have all the offerings that are going to be made available so people can come and work on those skills. I also host an event here in Charlotte called Speakeasy, which is a monthly event for anyone interested in speaking in any capacity, whether you have a story that you want to share. If you just want to get better at one-on-one conversation, some people have a difficult time doing this. Or if you do have a keynote, or you've got, you want to work on your corporate pitch, or you've got a presentation coming up, you've got a meeting that you're about to run. Everyone right now is speaking. And if you aren't, you're going to any second. Everyone's going to have to speak at some point. Everyone's got a platform. Everyone's got a medium. Everyone has something that they're promoting. There are more, entrepreneurs and solopreneurs, now that's a term, I think, than there ever have been.
Absolutely. So
the need for speaking skills, in my opinion, has never been greater. It's never been greater. When I first started offering my services as a public speaking coach, I did not realize the need was so spread out. And that was one of the first things that I noticed, like, oh my gosh, this is needed in almost every walk of life and in almost every profession. And most people aren't comfortable with it. Most people don't like it.
It's a fear like death.
Right. Right. Yeah, we know the Seinfeld
huge
joke.
Fear, yeah.
Right. So it's, and because everyone is speaking and we're surrounded by this noise is what it ends up becoming, whether it be on social media or online or whatever it might be, then how are you going to separate yourself from that stuff? If everybody's doing the same thing, then what makes you different from somebody else? So this is where my skills as an actor, as a performer, I've been doing this for over 30 years. I've performed in front of every type of audience that you can imagine. The joke that I make is that I've done everything except for porn, as far as you know. I started out doing stand-up. I've done improv. I've done theater. I've coached actors. I've directed theater. I've done film, television, commercials. I've done corporate stuff. I've done public speaking. I've hosted live events. So I have been in front of every type of audience that you can imagine. So I know what it's like. I know what it's like to be up there. I know what it's like to have an audience come with you and have this wonderful experience. And I also know what it's like to die 1,000 deaths and have it fall completely flat and having to sort of regroup and pick it back up and know that you've got a choice to make. Do I stop putting myself out there and go do something else? Or do I learn from it and try to get better? Because as we see, the competition is going to keep growing and growing and growing.
And that thing that you're afraid of, that's the thing you need to be doing.
Oh, for
because
sure.
that gets you
for
there.
Sure.
Being comfortable with being uncomfortable is the only way to progress. It's I think it was Miles Monroe that said that being uncomfortable brings transformation. And I think it was also Grant Cardone that was talking about that. Your fear, when if you tackle that, then you move towards what you need to do.
Yeah.
And in a public speaking sense, no matter what job you have, in order to get higher up in that job, your public speaking skills become very necessary.
Yes.
Whether it's corporate meetings, whether it's presenting what the product is. out, for a client.
Right.
We all see those, you're an actor, so you've seen these shows, you've probably been in them, where they got to pitch that client and something screws up their day before they get, but that's a pretty important place.
Yep.
And, even when it comes to, like we talked about, even the wedding, that somebody's really depending on you to help make that day pretty special.
Yeah.
And I like the way that you do it, in that you're teaching them, but you also have that opportunity with speakeasy,
right?
That you can put them in front of people, and that gets them pretty used to it.
You get that practice, right?
Yeah.
I give them that opportunity to practice, which we rarely get, especially in public speaking. In acting, at least we get to rehearse. We get to rehearse with a director. We get to rehearse with the other actors. We get to, have that prep time. When you're doing public speaking or you're working on your own, corporate pitch, it's you by yourself until you do it. And then you do it one time and it's over, and you get the feedback is either they liked it or they didn't. They're not going to tell you what they liked about it or what they didn't like about it. You kind of have to figure out on your own, all right, how do I need to make this better next time? Why didn't it go the way that I wanted to? So with Speakeasy, I've done just that. I've basically taken that whole theater environment, that theatrical environment, that rehearsal environment, and offered it to people in the corporate and professional world who are speaking as much, if not more, than a lot of actors are, but they don't get that opportunity to work on it in that way.
Right. And you do it before and after. You have a prep before they go up, and you have a feedback.
Yes.
And coaching after they come down, like an immediate coaching.
Yes.
Which is a great way to do that. So what's one mental shift that they can make happen that will, and I'm just talking one, that will help them show up on stage?
Well, the biggest one, and it really is more of a mindset shift than a technique per se, is you have to remember that and we talked about this a little bit at the beginning of the interview, is that it's not about you. It's never about the speaker. It's about the audience. And I know that can seem a little counterintuitive, because it's like, well, I'm the center of attention. I'm the main focus. All eyes are on me. How is it not about me? Because you're there for them. You're there to share something with them for their benefit. Like you said, you've got a story that can help that person, help anybody in that audience. You're just there to share that with them. You can't control how they're going to respond. You have no idea how the audience is going to respond. So
that's the fun of it.
It is, but at the same time, take that pressure off yourself. You can't control it. So let go. The only thing that you can do is to show up as prepared as you can possibly be and share something with that audience that you care deeply about.
And that actually, that helps with the anxiety of it.
Absolutely.
Because one thing, when they're talking to you about anxiety, they have these things like the breathing exercises where you breathe in 1, 2, out 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not about the breathing. It's about the counting. The counting takes your mind off of what you fear about. My wife was dancing in front of one of her first big crowds. It's like 2,500 people in a sold out, theater, which was here in Charlotte, the Belk Theater.
Yes.
And she was looking out at that curtain. She was like, oh my God. And I was like, it's not about you. Those people have walked through that door. Some of them had arguments with their spouse. They've been yelled at by their boss. Maybe something happened in their family. What you're doing is going to be an escape for them. So focus on them. And she walked out. It was a magnificent performance.
Totally.
Because it was about the audience.
Always.
Took the pressure off of her, but it made them feel, you're making that whole audience feel welcome. Like they walked in and that was the moment they were looking for. So it's a great way to train them. Do you teach people these things that we talked about, like silence and projection?
Sure.
And, these, do you teach them the way, some similar things that you've learned in acting in this as a public speaker?
I'm teaching a lot of acting techniques in the public speaking because to me, they're one and the same. If you're in front of an audience, I don't care if you're, sharing corporate information or if you're telling a story, the principles are absolutely the same and your responsibility is the same. Your main responsibility is to keep your audience's attention. So what's the most dynamic and impactful and fun way for me to do that? And that's another thing, folks, for those of you who are interested in public speaking, it needs to be fun. If you're not having fun, they're not having fun. So I work on performance techniques with them. Let's find the humor in it. How can we lighten this up? Where can we take a moment?
Yeah. And if you don't have somebody coaching you, if you don't have somebody coaching you on the humor part of it, it's such a huge risk. Right. When you have somebody that knows, how to bring that, and knows how to bring the body, when it comes to speaking, a lot of people that first start speaking, they think it's just about the mouth.
Oh, yeah.
But it's about the entire body. It's about taking up space. It's about not looking, one-dimensional.
Right.
And so when you have so many tools, you look at T.D. Jakes. I grew up seeing these pastors. He's got that thing where he stands there and he turns sideways, but that part pulls you in, or even like Captain Kirk, on screen.
Sure.
All those motions that some people they'll make fun of and all, but it became a trademark.
That's right.
And you paid attention.
Yes.
To everything he did.
Yes.
And Martin Luther King Jr.
Yep.
I mean, it was the sound of that voice. It was the way he looked, when he was looking at the audience, and the motions that he was doing with his hand, and pulls you in. You see that with it. That's one thing I'll say, even after people that you coach, don't just look at one speaker, and don't imitate just that one speaker.
No.
You look at how many influences are out there, everybody that you can think of that's good and bad, that's ever done a speech, and what is it about them that, can add to what you're doing.
Yeah. Because most
like
people,
a musical influence, right?
And you've seen it just as much as I have, where most people, when they get up in front of an audience, especially in a corporate or professional setting, as soon as basically the red light comes on, they're going to talk and keep talking and make sure that they fill every moment with sound. Because if they stop talking, then someone's going to die. There is that sense that it's like, I'm responsible for filling every moment with sound, and you're not. Again, I'm going to go back and ask, who told you that? Did anyone give you that direction and say you have to fill every moment with sound? This is up to you. You get to decide how this goes. This is where the fun comes in. This is where the playfulness comes in. And if you're not finding a way to make it fun for yourself, for you to enjoy sharing what you're doing, it's not about being, monkeying around and being the center of attention. It's like, hey, everybody look at me. No. If I'm not enjoying having this conversation with you, or if I'm not enjoying sharing this story with you, then there's no way that the audience is going to enjoy it. There's no way.
Absolutely. And like you said, it's not even all about movement all the time. It's, even in film, of course, those moments of like an F. Murray Abraham or a Daniel Day-Lewis, and I know they have a close-up, but they could sell it, I think, even, at a distance. But they just have that thing where they just look at the camera and they move their eyes or their eyebrows a certain way. And just that alone, there's a scene in Phantom Thread where they have she's a new actress. Yeah. She was on TV, but she was new to film, and she was cast with Daniel Day-Lewis in that, I think it's a Paul Thomas Anderson film. And in that, he's ordering his food in a restaurant. And he asked her a question, and it seems like it must be 20 seconds before she answers that question. But that tension and the way they pull you in calls you to lean in.
Oh, yeah.
Even more. Yeah. Into that scene. And so having an acting coach that also is a public speaking coach, I number one recommend that. I mean, that's a great thing.
I appreciate that. I actually do. I talk about the history of film a little bit sometimes when I'm working with people, and I always go back and say, when movies first started, what type of movies were they? They were silent. There wasn't even any words. There were no words in them, and this is where I can relate it to people who use, slides and visual aids in their talk. And it's like, it was all active. You didn't need the words. The words were secondary. As soon as they established the story, you were into the story. And then the slide would come up and it'd say, he went that way. And then it would be gone, and you get back to people chasing each other or whatever it was. And now that sound came in, because obviously that was pretty darn successful for the movie industry, because look at it now.
Right.
So now we have sound.
It's another tool.
And so I say, go back and watch any movie that you love. And I want you to pay attention to how many times the person who's on screen isn't saying a word. And I'll ask them, it's like, why are they going to waste however many thousands of dollars on this scene or just one clip to show you someone who's not speaking? Because the words are secondary. It's not about the words. It's how the words that are being said to the person are affecting that person. That's what we want to see. That's what we relate to. We can hear what's being said. We don't need to watch somebody talk. We want to be able to feel something. We want to be able to experience something. And that's what we're trying to give them.
Well, how do they find out about you and your services?
You can find me at my website at brianlafontaine.com. You can follow me on Instagram. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can just email me at brianlafontainecoaching@gmail.com. Just say hi. I'd love to hear from you.
And I'm just telling you, he's got my number one recommendation. I've seen this guy speak. I've seen the work that he does. And this is one of the top things that people are interested in right now. And this is the guy. And he's not just here in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is our base, but he also does this virtually. So If he will also have a page on our site as well, which is rBeatz.com, rBeatzradio.com. You'll be able to come find him as well, and we will have all his social media handles if you can't find him there. Speaking of websites, they just sent me a note that we are nominated for Podcast of the Year at the Queen City Awards, and so they just told me to tell you to go vote at queencityawards.com /voting, and we are in the podcast category, and so make sure you tell your friends. Dude, thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Thank you so much for having me.
I got you quicker than I thought I'd get you, though. I thought this would really, because sometimes, I talk to somebody about being on the show, and between publicists and scheduling and everything else that you have to do, it takes a while, and you're like, hey, let's make this happen.
Yep.
It's like, I think we can if you can get this stuff filled out. And you're like, boom, we're there, and you show up. So, and can people just attend your speakeasy event that are not on stage?
Oh, yeah. You can sign up as a speaker or a spectator.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're able to do that through the site.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Well, you heard it. And thank you for tuning in again here at rBeatz. Tell your friends about it. You're a big reason, why we've grown so fast, and we greatly appreciate it. And as always, much love. See you next time.